via Facebook Messenger chat, so hopefully it works. Why do I have 2 calls with you on it? No, that's the old call. And today we are going to talk about things, specifically Final Fantasy, the very first Final Fantasy ever. Can you see my screen, Tim?
Yeah. Now, do you want to pause this and cut it and see if it's recording and what it sounds like, if I'm being picked up and all that stuff?
No, we already did that. Your kids already told me they could hear you.
Okay.
And if not, we can just record it again, because this is actually my second time.
Well, let's cut it and start over for real.
No, we aren't going to cut it. We'll just do it. And then if it doesn't work, well, look, Zach is playing video games instead of watching our live stream. Thanks a lot, Zach. Okay, here we go. So, Tim, would you like to introduce yourself and how you're related to Final Fantasy?
My great Chinese grandfather created the game.
It was created by the Japanese.
Oh, yeah, that's what they'll tell you. That's because they won the war. All right, my name is Tim Wild, and Final Fantasy. I first played Final Fantasy in like 1989. This is called Final Fantasy. It wasn't
interruption there, Tim. You did not play Final Fantasy in 1989. Do you know how I know that?
Because it didn't come out yet?
Exactly. Well, actually, it didn't come out in
90.
the States yet. It was 1990 when.
Well, like I said, my great Chinese grandfather gave me the original.
Pre-release, the beta.
Yeah. Anyway, so I played it. Didn't have any idea what a role-playing game was. Didn't have any idea what. I mean, the only thing.
Wait! I gotta interrupt you there. You know what a role-playing game was because we went to Mill Hollow camping trip. And I invited you into my tent, and I showed you.
It sounds a little dirty.
And I showed you tabletop role-playing game.
Yeah.
Paper pencil RPG.
Yeah, which was like 3 years later. At the time I first played Final Fantasy, I was living in California before I even moved here, and I even knew that the person called Lance Carlisle existed. It was a wonderful time in my life. No, I played this in California, and again, we didn't know what the game was. The cover for the first game, and you can see it right here on your Wikipedia page, has that sword and the battle axe. It looks all rugged and awesome. Like that's what the box and the Nintendo game came in. And I still have my first cartridge.
Zoom in
that
one. Bad boy. Yeah, it's really bad. Let me see if I can get a better.
And what I most remember, and this is back when Nintendo games had really awesome art, like the Iron Sword and Wizards and Warriors, like those kind of games. They looked like so awesome.
Yeah,
and then
it was like nothing like the actual game.
Exactly. So that's that third one in the first one right there. Yeah, that's the Nintendo box. Is it?
No, this is not. Oh, maybe that might be the original. It says box art.
Scroll down to the picture. This is engaging for everyone, I'm sure. Scroll down to the actual. Not that. No, not that. One. That. I'm talking about the box. Yes. Not the. No, that never existed. That didn't. That was not in the book, and I still have the original book. I'd have to go look for it. So it has to be on that shelf.
84-page Explorer's Handbook. Did it really?
Yeah, Silas is going to grab it right now. I'm pretty sure I still have it. But
wow.
Anyway, long story short, what I remember is thinking like how cool this was, and then starting the game, and then you have like these little 4 pixelated guys walking around, and you're like, what is happening? And I didn't.
So Final Fantasy 2 was the first one I played, and I didn't play Final Fantasy 1 until later on because you were always talking about how awesome it was. And so I was the same way. I was like used to playing like Contra or Mario and like action games, Zelda. And then they're like, what the crap is this menu crap? I want to like hit the enemies like with my sword or whatever. And I was like, this is so lame and stupid.
You thought it was going to be like Zelda.
Yeah.
Only you have the sword and an axe or whatever.
Yeah. But
and then this world, the orb and the world and everything, which is like very, when you look at this art, the the floating fortress in this game is like 4 stories. It's like very very narrow, and the world is like so much bigger. You can't even find the continents because there's so much water on the actual continent. And so I was like, I don't know what this is. And then after I finally got that far in the game years later, by the time I could actually do it, I look back at this picture. I'm like, what the crap? How was that a floating fortress like bigger than the planet itself? Anyway, but yeah, so my only memory of the first time playing it. My cousin was staying with us in California. My brother and I, and she played it. That was not very well done grammar. There was that. But we played through it, and I remember the first time we got through the first town and bought weapons, we didn't know what equipping weapons was because this is the first time playing it. So
and like it's not like the newer Final Fantasies where it actually gives you a tutorial for all that stuff. Back then it just threw you in the deep end of the pool, and I was the same thing. I was like, you walk out in the world and you fight monsters. You don't have any swords, nothing, and then you just get killed. Like, wow, this is awesome. Are you still there, Tim?
Yeah, sorry, I was grabbing my book. So I have it right here.
And so, like, I wonder if I was like you, if I played Final Fantasy 1 for the first time. I don't know, because back then the thing was there wasn't a whole lot of games, and it's like no matter how bad it
there are 100,000 games.
No matter how bad it was back then, like it was better than E.T. and like Space Invaders.
Yeah, this wasn't like a time.
And back then, when you bought a game, like you owned it. You had to play it. You couldn't just let it sit there.
Yeah. So here I have the book, and on page 12, it says equip. To equip your weapons and your armor, you first need to go to the menu screen, blah, 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 blah. It tells you exactly how to do it with screenshots and everything that are pretty clear.
What's it called? An adventure guide?
No, this is the handbook. It's called the Explorer's Handbook. This is the book that came with the game.
I wonder if I can get it online.
The colors are all like yellow, but I don't know if that was like the design of the paper back then, or if it's because of age. Because maybe it was supposed to look like an old scroll or something.
There's a picture. Explorer's Handbook. Wow.
That's it. That's what I have in my hand. That's my hand, actually. I posed for that picture.
So speaking of Explorer's Handbooks, by the way, what does it have inside? Does it give you
80 pages?
Is it like a walkthrough?
No. Oh wait, no, there's a little bit of that. I'm just kind of browsing. So
doesn't it give you like a walkthrough, like the first few dungeons or something like that?
It shows you the castle, Corneria, and what the stores are, there, how to read the screens, and shows you where the first bad guy is, Garland, who that is, by the way. How to do a battle. Has little screenshots and instructions, because no one, like you said, no one knew how to use a menu screen before. Because even Dragon Warrior, I'm pretty sure it came out before this, and it was far inferior compared to this. It was still fun. I never played it till long after I played Final Fantasy. But it even shows you tactics. But this was a lot different than, because this was a team, and Dragon Warrior was just one guy, and you'd come up upon like one or two.
Yeah, so I didn't realize Dragon Warrior came out first.
Yeah. Well, because the first one is very inferior compared to Final Fantasy 1.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy 1 is actually pretty well done for its time as far as the game strategies and all that. Even though everything's broken in the American version, it's still pretty impressive. It's still fun. It's one of my favorite ones to go through. I play through that one at least kind of like once every year or two at least.
So here's the table of contents.
Yeah.
So it gives you the Corneria.
Yeah, page 40 or so, it starts going into how to move forward with the first few dungeons.
How to save important.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. If you didn't know how to save, you didn't understand what saving was. Although The Legend of Zelda came out long before this, and I think, from what I remember, that's the first game I ever played that had a save feature.
Yeah, I think did the very first Zelda have a save feature?
Yes, and you had 3 profiles. That was one thing that Final Fantasy lacked, was multiple profiles.
Yeah.
You had one save, and if someone borrowed your game, which this happened to me, and they actually went in and used the tent or went into the end, they erased your profile.
Yep.
And it's not like games now where it has like 12 pop-up screens that say, "Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure?" It's just done.
Well, and the key to all Final Fantasy games, at least up to 10 probably, is save often. And also, you can always tell that there's about to be a boss fight if there's a save point.
Now, no, hang on. This Final Fantasy never had save points. You are on the overworld or at the inn. There's nothing in the dungeons.
You can save at the inn.
Yeah, that's the main way to save, and that revives everything except for brings your guys back to life. Well, in the original, which is much more.
How long can your name be? Like 4 characters?
4.
Yeah,
four,
right there.
four characters.
A and A.
Yeah. There's your samples. So yeah, that was the first experience walking around, learning how to grind a little bit. You just kind of, if you just walk right to Garland and don't know what you're doing, or if you go into the castle, the first bad guy castle, the ruined castle, you just get obliterated because there's spiders that poison you. No poisoning.
Of course.
I think they paralyze you and stuff.
Of course, you got to talk to everyone. Who doesn't want to talk to everyone?
Yeah, back then especially. Yeah, this was the beginning of like one-way conversations. You're like, how come? I mean, it's not like you comprehended menu screens to talk back, but you're like, they say weird things, and it's very wow, it's a very poor dialogue.
Yeah, no wonder. Like, well, the reason is you didn't read the instructions, Tim. That's why you didn't know.
Of course not. I was 9 or 10.
Buy
of course,
weapons.
An 80-page book. What was this, homework?
While in shops or inns. Capital I, capital N, capital S.
Yeah, and by the way, you can't buy weapons in the inns.
Why did they put inns in all caps though? Because look, they have lowercase lettering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This says the keeper will direct you to the choices available to you. What you mean? Yes or no to save? That's all it does. Anyway,
Equip right here. Equip. You didn't read equip down on page. What page is this?
Yeah,
you didn't get to page 12, Tim.
I didn't read any of it because when you play Zelda, you watch the opening story and it shows you what the items look like. That's all you need to do. It's like 2 buttons and that's it.
No one ever read an instruction manual. In fact, the only instruction manual I think I ever read before like the year 2000 was Microsoft Flight Simulator, but that was a freaking flight simulator.
Right.
Right now I'm drinking Malz. It's from Germany. It's one of the best drinks ever. They don't have it in the States.
That's fascinating. And you're in Taiwan.
And they should send me some money for advertising for them.
Yeah. So when my son hears this, he's gonna want some.
Oh, so we'll get to that in the. There's some interesting things about Final Fantasy and how it was different between the American version and the Japanese version.
Oh, have you been doing your homework and how the American version is like the hardest, glitchiest game ever, and it's awesome?
We'll talk about that as well. But yeah, the clinic can revive a slain ally. So the clinic.
Yeah, that's the only way to revive. There was no life spell.
There is in the version I'm playing.
No, there is, but it's not like till like a third of the way through the game. After the marsh cave and after all that first stuff in the first section of the world.
Run as a strategy. All that. Did you actually have to run in this Final Fantasy?
Yeah, but if you had the thief, you were supposed to be able to run more effectively because he had higher luck. But no, that didn't do anything. The luck stat does nothing in the
I'm
American
pretty sure that the thief in this game actually doesn't do anything at all.
Well, he was supposed to have luck.
Does he actually have a steal command? I can't remember.
No, there was no stealing. There was no. You bought your gear in the shop, or you found it in a treasure chest. That's it.
So the only thing that the thief could do, or supposed to be able to do, is run.
I am.
Yeah, and he had some weapons.
The princess is free.
Yeah, all this. Yeah, that's the first level. Anyway, in addition to the book you're reading through, I also have the Nintendo Power Strategy Guide, and this was the second, if I remember, of 4 full strategy guides dedicated, or Nintendo Power is dedicated to a single game. The first one was Super Mario 3, I think, but that was like one of the most famous strategy guides ever because Mario 3 was such a big deal, and it had like all the games and the maps and everything, and so like it had cheats so everyone could get all the way through it. Final Fantasy, though, this was critical.
Do you talk to a drunk guy in this? What is Tickles Bees up?
No, it's Push B Select spelled backwards. That's a magic spell from a bat, and all that does is that either brings up the sub map or the map on the overworld, which is just all glitchy with just a bleeping dot wherever you are, but it shows the continents. Or there's one of those games where you have to move there's like 10 blocks and you have to like move the squares around to put them in order, like counting 1 through 10. There's one of those games that's a secret in here.
Wow, these graphics, man. Good, lots of memories. But you know what? This game, like, it was pretty fun. Like, even coming back to it from Final Fantasy II, I played Dragon Warrior and I liked it, or whatever it was called back then. Yeah, it was called Dragon Warrior, right?
Dragon Warrior is still Dragon Warrior. It never changed.
Well, they call it Dragon Quest or some weird name for a number of years. And then they switched back. Anyways, but yeah, even playing Final Fantasy II, which is actually the Japanese Final Fantasy IV, and coming to Final Fantasy I, it was still fun. Like, it has a pretty cool, clippy story. And
I like the story. I think this game would be a really fun B movie to make, like a Beastmaster level movie to make.
It's always good to have a good goal for a B movie, Tim.
I'm serious. I don't want like a Lord of the Rings budget thrown at Final Fantasy 1, but I would love to have like cheap just something just to move through the story with like very simple sets and stuff and cheesy castles, really goofy villains or the monsters and stuff. I think it'd be awesome. I think it's a fun little story. The travel through time loop concept, I think is kind of cool.
I think that the airship discovery in this Final Fantasy is one of the best. Don't you find it in like the desert or something?
Yeah, and you have to go through like 5 critical castles to get to like dungeons where you don't have life spells yet. And then by the time you finally get it, it is so relieving. You were like, when you can fly around for the first time, and it's the only way to travel without encountering any monsters, including on the ship. You fight monsters. And when you get that airship, it's like you have all this freedom. You're like, I'm going to go anywhere. And then you go to the northern continents, and then like there's nowhere to land because they designed the terrain so you can't actually land close to the towns unless you're like at a higher level to survive the forests and the marshes and stuff. So they still cut you off and make you go spot to spot to spot through the narrative.
Well, but yeah, I remember that. And the other thing that I remember, wow, this like covers a big old chunk of the game though. This book, does it cover it all the way to the end? But I remember my only other major memory of this game is, well, of course, the very first when you go up and fight the vampire guy, right?
That's halfway through the Earth Cave right there. That's where you're at right now.
And then my other memory is there's like some enemies that just straight out kill you, and I don't even think they cast like a spell on you, just straight up kills you.
There's 1,000 of those spells, rub or XXX or whatever.
And you can't, and a lot of them you can't kill like until you're like really really far up in level. So like it says, this is definitely a game where if I remember correctly, sometimes running is your best bet.
But those spells are like on the
I remember the
bosses. And again, the original version, you did not have lives until a third way through, and you couldn't do anything. If they came and just rubbed you, well, that sounds dirty. But I mean, if they XXX'd you or whatever, or nuked you,
that also sounds dirty, Tim.
Yeah, if they XXX'd you, that's much better than rubbing you.
By the way, avoid walking through lava.
Yeah,
that's good. That's good.
It takes off like 1 hit point each step. Anyway. There's nothing you can do.
Advice in general, Tim.
Don't walk in lava?
Yes. Oh, there it is.
It's a common occurrence in my life. But anyway, I was just saying that you can't do anything unless you're a higher spell and you're like intelligence or luck or something is higher. That's the only way to survive those.
Oh, that's right. Later on, you become you can change your class, huh?
Not can you. If you do that side quest, you automatically do.
And apparently you become twice the regular size.
You're all like buff football players.
Yeah.
Now the Black Wizard that you're looking at, that's very iconic. That's like the most stereotypical wizard. Not the wizard, the mage, the regular one with the hat.
Yeah.
That's like the most stereotypical mage ever. You still see that come up all the time. Same thing with the knight, the fighter, not the knight. That's funny. No one ever looks at the mature versions as like the icons. It's always the goofy one.
Well, I want to know why this ninja goes from wearing like a brown gi to a red gi.
The football pads.
Like, wouldn't it be a black gi?
Yeah. Well, that wouldn't stand out on some levels. Maybe I don't know. Or maybe it was. Maybe how are you gonna do black? Well, I can't think of a lot of black stuff in the game. Yeah, you can't draw the details if he's in black.
Oh, and here's your index in the back in case,
In the 80-page manual, that's
like,
helpful.
Canoe. I can't remember where the canoe is. Oh, page 69.
Of course you picked that one as an example.
90-day limited warranty.
If you hate this game, we get it.
If
you Americans can't figure anything out.
If after 90 days you still can't equip weapons and armor, then... Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now we're gonna jump into okay, that's the Explorer's Handbook. That's good to know. But now we're gonna jump into
Wait, you're not gonna read the introduction? I think before we play, you should read the introduction in the book.
Oh man, I just skipped past it. I think I closed it. Wikipedia. Oh, I already closed it, Tim. You read it.
How to begin your Final Fantasy adventure. Insert your Final Fantasy game pack.
No, you got to blow in it first.
Okay. Your adventure begins... ... Your 4 warriors begin their quest at the entrance to Corneria, the Dream City. Within sight are many geographical features. There's like 3 buildings of this world. It is important to understand the terrain in order to guide your adventure party on its quest. Oh, it's talking about there's trees, there's a mowed green field, and then there's like a weird metal fenced-in town with 6 identical buildings, and then the castle. So and a dock that you can't tell is a port for like half the game, till you get your ship and sail over here.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's it.
Okay.
And then it has an intro at the beginning of each section.
Okay, well, here we go. The Wikipedia article. It was published in 1987 in Japan by Square. So this is the thing about Square. I did a little bit of research because I'm like, Square, back then it was called Squaresoft. But right here it says the company also used Squaresoft as a brand name to refer to their games. So apparently the other things they made were just Square. And I would like to know what they made besides video games back then, but
Tiles.
Originally released for NES. Is frequently packaged with Final Fantasy II and video game collections. That's not true. Not in 1987. Back then, we didn't know. No one told us that Final Fantasy I and Final Fantasy II were actually Final Fantasy I and Final Fantasy IV.
Right.
You had to be a weebo back then.
They had already made, and Japanese people had already played through 3 Final Fantasies before we figured out how to like equip our characters.
Wait, who each carry? Oh, okay. So the Light Warriors, and they each carry 4 elemental orbs, which are darkened by the 4 elemental fiends. Which elemental fiends is a theme throughout all of the Final Fantasies that I've ever played.
But they're never quite as significant in the story as this one.
So that's another thing too. Like, you can choose your warriors, right? You can choose their class.
Yeah, you have 6 classes to choose from, 4 guys.
So that's
you can double up. You can have multiple of the same guy.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I don't like. So one of the things I really liked about Final Fantasy II, above most of the other Final Fantasies, is if you were a wizard, you were always a wizard. And if you were like, you always leveled up, and it gave each of the characters sort of like a theme. Like Rosa was always the healer, and I actually prefer that over a lot of the Final Fantasies do what Final Fantasy 1 does, which allows you to create your character. Like for instance, I'm playing through Final Fantasy 6, and once you get materia, you can basically get any spell you want, blah blah blah. I think that takes away from like the character development more than it adds.
I agree with that, but in the narrative leading up to when, excuse me, by the time you get to the point where you have that option, they are still like your primary magic user. So by the time you get there, you kind of focus on it. It does make people OP, and in that game, the magic is definitely OP. But like that's the difference in between this game and then all the future games. Is this is the one where you had random, I guess not all of them, but this is the one where you had like you select your party and they were insignificant in the plot. They were like no-name, mindless characters that were just your avatars to get you through the story. The other ones, all the other games, the characters were written into the narrative where your party members coming and going as the story progressed. So that's where it made more sense to have them have healers and a warrior and a bad guy and all that stuff in your party and a ninja, whatever.
Yeah, and this one, like Tella, who had to jump in and like he was way OP when he first jumped in and save you and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Well, by March 2003, all versions of Final Fantasy had sold combined a total of 2 million copies worldwide. I wonder how much it is now because obviously this Wikipedia article is a little bit old.
And I had one of those copies.
Yes.
I still have it. I still have the cartridge, and it has the save on it when the first time I beat it. Though the first time I really beat it when I learned how to grind, and I have my guy maxed out at level 50. Level 50 is as high as you can get your characters in that first game.
Yeah, they've changed that so you can get up to 99.
Yeah, it's stupid. I like having limits. Makes it difficult.
There is a limit, Tim. 99.
Okay.
Okay, so enemies are randomly encountered. I remember that my first experience with that in Final Fantasy 2, and I really didn't like it because there's no other game I can think of except for RPGs that have like random, I don't know. Like most enemies are predictable. Like you think of Contra, you can memorize who's going to come next.
Patterns and spawn points, yeah.
Yeah. And there are like, sorry, my mic is freaking out. There are games that are role-playing games that don't have randomly encountered enemies, such as like
Mystic Quest.
The newer Dragon Warriors and Mystic Quest. Mystic Quest was awesome.
I think it's underrated.
But
it's not great, but it's fun.
I think I still lean towards not having random. I don't know. I think the random encounter thing is still, a little weird.
I like it.
Dungeons, experience points. So what I was going to say is that I guess thinking back, if Dragon Warrior came first, I wonder how much of the role-playing experience was like established by Dragon Warrior and how much was established by Final Fantasy.
Well, this game was very much more like Dungeons and Dragons then.
Well, actually down here it says it was based on Dungeons and Dragons somewhere, which I'm surprised they admitted.
Well, in the Wikipedia age, they're not ashamed. Back in the time, like in the handbook, when you bought it in 1990, it wouldn't have said inspired by Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, mostly because they'd probably be afraid they'd get sued. But yeah, we already talked about the menu-based combat. And I think the menu-based combat is starting to go out of style because you get like Final Fantasy Remake where it's more like action-based. I mean, it's obvious that back then they had like limitations. And I don't know. Do you prefer menu-based or action-based?
You mean like Zelda and stuff? Or are you talking about like, they both have their place. If I'm just in a mood where I just want to get in and just start slashing and having fun, like running around with Zelda, fighting Hyrule guards and stuff, that's what I want to do. You don't really get in a mood where like, I want to walk around the trees and find imps and attack them and strategize my tactics, you know what I mean? But there's another thing that's different about this game, which I really like, is it's like a puzzle. Because this game, when you have your party attacking, or you're in a battle, you have to designate which enemy you attack. And this is the one game that doesn't automatically move you to the next enemy if that person is killed before you strike.
Yeah, except in the new one, it actually doesn't do that. But the old
They went back
original
to
one,
that.
yeah.
I love that because it makes it harder. It makes you have to strategize and plan your attacks better, and you have little gambles here and there.
Yeah,
And
I actually agree with you on that one because when I read about that, and we'll talk about the different versions and what the differences between them are in a second, but I agree with you. Like, it does force you to like think a little bit more about the battle and stuff.
Each round you have to pay attention. You can't just hold down A with that. What is that? The memory, the cursor just staying on whatever you just had.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Yeah.
So.
I like that. It's a fun little puzzle that only exists in this game.
Well, and I think that if you do menu-based games, it does add a little bit more strategy to things instead of skill. So I don't know. I think you're right. It does have its place, but in general, I steer towards more action. It would be nice, like, I don't know, so Final Fantasy VII Remake, in my opinion, is the best RPG up to this point in time in terms of gameplay. And it does have some strategy elements, even though it's action-based, because you have to you can flip through your menu, and there's certain spells you got to use, and just you got to think about it. So I think it's combined menu with action in a really good way. But anyways, that's not Final Fantasy 1. Gil, the introduction of Gil.
It was not Gil in the original.
What was it?
Just gold. Or G. Well, no, you know what? I don't know. It says GP. Yeah, you're right. It is GP. I always thought it was gold points. Let me look in here.
Does it even say GP or is it just G?
It says GP.
Oh. Gil
Let
points,
me look.
Tim.
Yeah. I never would have heard the word. I never heard the word Gil until like the 4th Final Fantasy game I played.
I wonder if it's like a translation from Japanese or something. I should Google it. No,
I'm gonna look up what it says.
It's global interpreter lock.
Yeah, I didn't know what Gil was. I think it was Final Fantasy VII. Is the very first time I played. I played a game and heard what Gil was, because it was even GP in Final Fantasy 2/4.
It's gotta have some kind of like Japanese root or something. Oh, here, let's see what this says. Gil, Giru.
The part of a fish that makes it breathe underwater.
It doesn't really say why though, because Giru doesn't sound like Gil.
Nope, it's gold, because it shows on the battle screen. It says your experience up 4P, gold 18G. It's gold in the original, at least the American version. Who knows what the Japanese?
If a party's player wherein each character will gain not only experience but also money, which is known as Gil in the Final Fantasy universe.
Yeah, but nerds that wrote Wikipedia pages would have played the modern versions.
Yeah,
they weren't cool and played the old ones.
That's true. We need to edit this, Tim. Oh, wait. But it says this comes from the Final Fantasy Explorer's Handbook manual.
I'm holding it in my hand, and I see pictures of the game that say gold. But again, that's in English. We'd have to find this page, page 18, in the Chinese version or the Japanese version, and see what the character says.
Okay.
First, we need to find out if there is a character for Gil in Japan.
Okay, so Final Fantasy is the first game to show players on the right side of the screen and enemies on the left side of the screen. So, yeah, because I think that Dragon Warrior had them at the bottom.
You're on the bottom.
Yeah.
Yep, you're on the bottom, and it's kind of first person. I don't even think it shows you. Maybe it does.
I don't think it does. I don't think it shows you. You're right.
Yeah.
Each character has an occupation. So the 6 classes are Fighter, Thief, Black Belt, Red Mage, White Mage, Black Mage. So Fighter is obvious. Thief
is a thief really an occupation?
Yeah.
Like, what do you do for a living? I'm a thief. I guess it works, but it's kind of a weird concept.
Well, I guess a Black Belt isn't really an occupation either.
Or a White Mage.
Later in the game, so you class upgrade, which we already saw the sprites. Weapons,
you tell
items.
People you're like, what do you do for a living? I'm a black belt staff. My focus is in nunchucks.
So so even if you do like being able to change your characters and stuff, I don't think you should be able to cast spells. Like I'm very racist I'm very classist. I think that there should always be people who can't cast spells, like fighters, black belts.
Or but they're very light. If you're talking about how they later on, like the fighter can cast spells, he only casts like level 1, 2, and 3 spells or something, and all that does is help. Yeah, he can't cast all the spells. Yeah, he only has slots that go to like level 4. No.
Okay.
No, when you mature, once you get halfway through and you go through the process and become a paladin, he can cast level 1, 2, and 3 spells, something like that.
Okay. Well, and this is the first game to introduce tents and cottages.
Woo!
So
they weren't cottages. There was a house.
Oh, that's right. I think it is a house, if I remember right.
It is a house. It's tent and house. Because you're like, how are you carrying around a house in your bag?
So, but what was the difference between tents and cottages?
A tent doesn't bring you. All it does is revive like 250 points or whatever. A house completely. No, there's a cabin too. A house is the best one. That restores, I think, all of your magic.
Doesn't one of them, like if you're knocked out, also revive you?
No, there's no knocking out. No, none of them do. If you have a dead character, you have to go to the clinic because there's no life spell for a long time.
Huh. So in later Final Fantasies, they mostly dropped everything to just be tents. I think some of them though still have cottages and stuff, and I know some of them have sleeping bags.
Yeah, that's where it's like just one character sleeps, everyone else stays up and nurses their wounds, but they don't get any better.
They're on watch.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, and here it says houses. So tents, cottages, and houses.
I think Final Fantasy IV is the first time I heard about a sleeping bag. Final Fantasy II didn't have a sleeping bag.
So houses give you your magic back.
Yeah, but not life. It doesn't restore your party's life.
Okay. So it talks a little bit about magic. Each character may learn only 3 spells per level.
Woo!
Except for black mages, and white and black mages can potentially learn any of their respective spells, while red mages and ninjas and knight cannot use most high-level magic.
And what sucks about that, and I swear they did it on purpose, the spells get so expensive to learn in this game that like you'll get to like level 5 or something, and like all of the spells, all 4 of them are crap. Like you don't care which ones you get, and so you don't buy any of them. Then you'll go to like the next level, and like they're all critical, so you have to pick one that you don't get. It didn't like stagger them out, so like you can always get just the good ones. It seems like some levels you just don't need any of them, and other levels you want all of them, and it really sucks.
That's right. They have like tiers, right?
Yeah.
And you can only buy 3 in each tier.
Tier like 1 through 9, I think, if I remember. Level 9's, yeah. But you have 3 slots to buy 3 spells of each tier, but they have 4 or 5 options, and you're like, crap. And one of them, they trick you. And towards the end of the game, one town is like the level 9 spell or 8 spell, and you go to a town and there's like 3 options, and you buy them all, and then later on you find a hidden town which has a special one, and you're like, I already used my slots.
So once your slots are used, you can't buy a spell and like replace.
Nope. That's it.
So that's why you gotta read the strategy guide.
Yeah.
Speaking of strategy guides, you might use it in your playthrough, but I'm not gonna use strategy guide. I think using strategy guides,
you have to use it to like know who can use what weapon, because the game is very unclear. This is before you had like when you go into a shop, everyone jumps up and down if they can use that weapon. They didn't do that back then. They just stood there and you had to know for yourself what weapon goes for who. And the little icons, like it's not like just like sword, shield, armor, and pants or whatever. It's like
you had to learn weapon names.
Yeah. It's like what's the difference between a shield and a buckler and a bracer, and if you didn't know, and some of them don't even make sense. It's like a brace, or some of them has like a ring. A ring replaces the shirt. I have a pro ring, so a pro ring is like your helmet, and like a a copper ring or whatever is going to be like and replace your shield, and another type of ring is going to be your armor. It doesn't. It's just so inconsistent. So
and this is why this is why we know all the medieval history better than the Constitution of the United States.
Yeah. And that's why I tell people, like I told your son even, anyone that beats the original Final Fantasy with nothing, no YouTube, no internet, no walkthroughs, all they have is, I'll give them the strategy guide I have, the book that came with it, and the actual charts that came with it that have every weapon, who can use them, every spell, all the weaknesses, the hit points, experience points, magic points, everything of every bad guy. And all the information is so much crap that like you don't even know what you can trust in those books. So it's like good luck, because if you go and you buy a sword,
wow,
and like no one in your party can use it, you just wasted all that money. So you have to save, go in and all that.
Well, and that's part of the grinding thing too, because I remember playing through it and I'm like, oh, that doesn't work, and you grind and get it again or whatever, I built it
before you stop.
I beat it without the strategy guide, Tim. I'm just telling you. Without the Explorer's Handbook.
No, I don't believe you beat the original.
I did. I beat it twice, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
I don't believe it. Anyway.
Giant space station. What? 400 years prior to the start of the game, the Finnish people who used the power of wind to craft airships and a giant space station. I don't remember that. Called the Floating Castle.
Yeah, that's the thing on the cover that's like 10 times the size of the planet.
Yeah, I don't remember the story. It's been so long since I played this. But we aren't going to go over the story.
Nope.
I wanted to go down to this development. So let me ask you this, Tim. Did you ever hear the rumors about why it's called Final Fantasy?
No.
You never heard rumors about that?
I've never heard that.
So I've
never heard a story till right now you're telling me something.
I heard that the reason it was called Final Fantasy is because like Squaresoft, or Square, if you will, was like in trouble financially, and like this game, if they didn't make money off of it, they would like go under. So they were like, okay, well, this is it. This is Final Fantasy.
Okay. And that's the story, but it's not true?
Well, we're about to find out.
So that sounds like the same story about Star Wars, where like 20th Century Fox was like almost out of money. They were dying. And they said, "Oh, we'll just give George Lucas our last bit of money," and he made this amazing movie, and he saved the company.
And he saved us all, yay!
And he did it all by himself at Skywalker Ranch, all just him.
So Sakaguchi, as I will call him, wanted to make a role-playing game for a long time, but Square refused to give him permission because they thought, low sales and nothing, no one would buy that crap. But then Dragon Quest, it was called Dragon Quest, Tim, was released and proved to be a hit in Japan. The company reconsidered its stance. So I like too how like he wanted to make a RPG, but they wouldn't let him. And then Dragon Quest came out. It's like it was his idea first, like basically.
No, like, that'll never work. He's like, and someone else makes that game.
Ultima and Wizardry. Ultima is a famous. Have you heard of Ultima, Tim?
No.
It was like a right there. It says Apple II. It was an old computer RPG. I have friends that like it. I've never played it. I'm sure James has intimate knowledge with it, even though he's never played it. James is Tim's brother. Anyways, I thought this was funny. Only 3 of his colleagues volunteered. So after that did good, they said, "All right, fine, we'll let you make your game." Yeah. It says only 3 of his colleagues volunteered. So the only people that were doing it were volunteer. I mean, I'm sure they got paid, but they volunteered to do it, right?
I heard it was just a few guys, and like that's why it's so glitchy. Like they work so hard. I'm sure that I've heard that part about it before. There was just a few guys that were just really passionate about it.
And he was thought of as a rough boss in spite of his unsuccessful creations. So they're like saying, like he was a terrible boss, even though like if you were a good boss, you can yell at people if you are successful or something. Anyway. Yeah. Eventually, Final Fantasy was developed by a team of 7 core staff members, the A-Team. So I don't recognize these names, but I'm sure that they're awesome game designers.
The A-Team was a series that had a guy named Mr. T and Smith and Faith and Murdoch.
So here it is.
Hey, Baracus. What?
Kawazu, which is one of the game designers, was responsible for battle system and sequences. So that's a groundbreaking guy right there. He based heavily on on the tabletop Dungeons and Dragons, and an RPG called Wizardry, which I've never heard of. There's another one down here too. We should check it out. So he's the one that came up with enemies' weaknesses to elements such as fire and ice, which apparently wasn't in part of Dragon Warrior. Was it part of D&D?
I'm pretty sure. He had elementals and spells back then.
Western RPGs. He advocated players' options to freely choose their own party member classes, which I don't like, but whatever. But I mean, that's what an RPG is supposed to be, right? Is creating a character, and that's a huge part of it nowadays.
Yeah. There's not really any role playing in Final Fantasy, the first one. Like, your role is to stand blankly while everyone tells you exposition and you move to the next level. You're not actually interacting or playing anything out or even having part of the story, I guess. Thanks for saving the princess. You're welcome. I feel like I'm part of the adventure.
So this guy is pretty important too, though, the other game designer, because he's the one who came up with the idea of crystals, which I'm pretty sure crystals are involved in every single Final Fantasy game I've ever played.
Very much. But this one had orbs. There were no crystals in the first one, even though the opening screen shows a crystal. Oh, no, it doesn't. That's Final Fantasy IV. I'm sorry. It's orbs in the first one, not crystals.
In 5, you mean?
In 1.
No, well, doesn't the cover?
No, the cover shows the floating continent that's the size of the sun.
Oh, interesting.
And an orb.
Right. They are orbs. Yeah, orb.
You're carrying the 4 because they're in your subscreen and they light up as you progress in each level.
I wonder if the Japanese translation calls them crystals instead of like crystal ball type thing instead of orbs. And I wonder. Well, we'll get to that in a second. But Ishii, so he did and this guy is actually one of my favorite authors, or illustrators of all time. Amano, like his that art that you said was on the box cover.
Yeah.
That's some of his art, and like he's basically the guy that did all the amazing art.
You're talking about the stuff that looks like Final Fantasy 5 or 4.
Yeah.
Or Final Fantasy 4. Yeah.
Yeah. When Sagaguchi showed Ishii some drawings on magazine clippings and told him that this was the art style he's looking for, Ishii revealed to him that these were actually created by Amano, hence leading to the involvement in the game. That's interesting. That's funny. So this guy's like, hey, look at these magazine clippings. We want this art style, and the guy was Amano, so they hired him.
And you have a book of that stuff, right?
Yeah. Like he's amazing. The music for Final Fantasy was composed by the greatest video game composer, and I would argue one of the greatest composers of all time, Uematsu. I don't know how to say his name. But yeah, that guy's amazing. His music's...
He came up with that guy?
Yeah. And he came up with the opera. And he made
Maria. I bet he didn't do the lyrics.
I think he even composed music. Well, he's retired now, but yeah, he's sort of like not George Lucas. Who's the guy that did Star Wars?
John Williams.
He's like John Williams. He like comes out of retirement to do Star Wars every few years or whatever. Well,
now I want to know who came up with the music for Final Fantasy, or I'm sorry, for The Legend of Zelda, because I think The Legend of Zelda music is the greatest video game score. I mean, several of the songs.
It's good, but no, I think Uematsu's music's better.
You think Final Fantasy music is better than the Zelda themes?
Yeah. Well, the Zelda things are pretty common amongst all the games. Final Fantasy's like music is all over the place.
Well, you're talking about it's like an orchestra piece versus just like a really fun little fanfare.
Oh, you mean the main Final Fantasy theme versus the Zelda theme? Nah, I'd still go with Final Fantasy. The little harp, Tim, in the beginning.
No, it's gorgeous. I love it. But I'm just saying, I think the music for the overworld of Final Fantasy or of Zelda. Dun, 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 dun. I think that is just an amazing piece.
It is, but I
heard it in orchestra form. It's beautiful.
Yeah, but I still gotta go Final Fantasy, Tim.
Okay, that's fine. They're both great.
So this is funny. An Iranian American programmer is the guy that coded it. They didn't even hire a Japanese guy to code the game. He initially tried to understand all aspects of the gameplay, but was soon advised by Sakaguchi to just program the design concepts so he didn't have to explain everything. He probably couldn't even understand what he's saying. Like, there was probably some language barrier there. So finally he's like, just do this.
He was like a foreign exchange student for like one semester at college, and then he was like, I can program your game.
So I think you described this sliding puzzle thing. Did you say that there was some kind of like sliding puzzle in there?
Yeah, that's it.
I don't remember that.
Well, look at that. It's a secret.
It's the first RPG minigame, Tim.
There you go. And you know what you get for doing it? Nothing. Like nothing happened. The box closes once you solve it. You're like, what the crap?
So then there were some other graphic designers and debuggers, but no one cares about those people. When the project,
especially debuggers, because they sucked when they made the American version.
This is funny though. When the project started to show promise, then these other guys come on, the B team. It's like, you guys are losers. You didn't volunteer in the beginning. You're just the B team, and now it starts to show promise, and they all jump on board, whatever. The lack of faith in Sakaguchi's team, as well as its unpopularity within the company, motivated the staff members to give their best. So basically, they're a group of losers, so they had to try really hard. Anyways.
Just to be involved?
Well, they had to prove that they weren't losers. Okay, so this is funny. They take it to Famicon's, which I think, well, Famitsu is, or Famicom is the name for Nintendo back in the day.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't think this is Nintendo Power though. This must have been before Nintendo Power. So they take the ROM, so they take the game to this magazine company, and it won't review it. But it gave it extensive coverage, and see, that's what I don't get. Why would they not review it? But they gave the game extensive coverage.
There's a Netflix series right now. It's called like Lowest Score or High Score or something like that, and it's about kind of the history of video games a little bit. And there's a part that talks about Nintendo Power's origin with the lady that came and put it together, and how they wanted to, how they wanted it to like be laid out similar to like. I think they talk about how it's like kind of like posters and like other marketing signs and stuff like in Japan and stuff. That's how they want.
But yeah, I think you're talking about Nintendo Power though.
Yeah, well, they talk about how it came from Famicom.
Oh yeah, because they wanted to. You're right.
They were kind of doing it similarly, but they were like, what's going to market better in the United States? It would be different than what would market in Japan, but they did it way better in Japan. Marketing in Japan is really effective.
So initially, they were only going to ship. They only shipped 200,000 copies, but Sakaguchi pleaded with the company to make 400,000 to help spawn a sequel, and the management agreed. And then it's successfully shipped 520,000 copies in Japan only. And then they localized Dragon Warrior and made it successful in Nintendo, and so they translated Final Fantasy English in 1990. So that's when you must have played it.
Yeah.
With modest success.
Now, did you play Dragon Warrior before you played Final Fantasy?
I think so, because they had it at Key Drug. I think they had Dragon Warrior at Key Drug. Key Drug was the local drugstore, and my parents would not allow me to have a Nintendo, so the only way I played Nintendo was either borrowing it from friends or renting it from the local drugstore.
Yeah, interesting. Because I never played it until a couple years later. I never played Dragon Warrior until after I played Final Fantasy.
I borrowed your copy of Final Fantasy 1, Tim, and that's how I cleared it the first time.
Okay.
You don't believe me, but it's true.
Okay. A lot happened in my childhood that I still have a hard time believing happened.
Okay, here we go. So The reason for choosing the word final to form the eventual title of Final Fantasy. So it talks about here, the original title for Sakaguchi's RPG concept was Fighting Fantasy, but it was changed to avoid issues with the tabletop game of the same name. So that's what we got to look up. We got to find Fighting Fantasy, the tabletop RPG. It's probably
I'm sure
terrible.
it's amazing.
So yeah, the reason for choosing the word final to form the eventual title of Final Fantasy was explained as twofold by Uematsu. For one thing, it stemmed from Sakaguchi's personal situation, as he would have quit the game and industry and gone back to university had the game not sold well. And for another, Square was under the threat of bankruptcy. So see, it is sort of true, mostly true.
That's by his story, it said? Yeah.
Which meant the game could have been the company's last. Although Sakaguchi confirmed some of the theories, he later downplayed the rationale for choosing the word final, saying that it was definitely a back-to-the-wall type situation back then, but any word that starts with F would have been fine. So that was
Any
the only
word?
thing he wanted. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, but you're not any word.
Yeah. That would be a very different game if it was called that F Fantasy.
Because see, in Japanese, it's called...
That element into the games later with the dancers.
Yes. F-U. So, yeah, FF. All right, and here's the billions of releases that there are. So, so this is interesting. They actually, so after it came out in Japan and US, the version that you're familiar with and that we originally played in our youth, in 1989, actually before the US version came out, there was a computer version of Final Fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. I wish I would have.
I've never met anyone that had played it.
Yeah, so there's this weird Microsoft product.
There's no more hidden nerd in the world than the guy that was playing Final Fantasy before it was on Nintendo.
That
Like,
guy is awesome.
That is the biggest nerd you'll have ever met in your childhood, and he's the most in the closet guy. No one will ever admit to have played that originally. I'm sorry.
If I would have known about it, Tim. But it did do some minor graphical updates, expanded the music, sound effects, and fewer loading times.
Yeah.
So Final Fantasy 1 and 2 came out, I guess, as a family computers Famicom. So this is NES. There was a Wonder Swan. I don't know if you know what Wonder Swan is, but it was a handheld like thing before Game Boy came out. Well, I don't know if it came out before, but it was pretty popular in Japan. I don't think it ever came out in the States.
I never had one.
So then PlayStation is probably the version of the game that most people are familiar with nowadays. It came out with Final Fantasy Origins.
They found it later. It's like, and everyone in Final Fantasy 2 and 4, Final Fantasy 2 and 3 in America were some really popular games, even for non-role-playing type characters.
Yeah, I wonder why they decided not to come out with them. It was sort of dumb. Because they made such success with 1. Like, what was it? They're like, oh, we made too much money with 1. We're not going to release 2 and 3.
I'm sure there's a story behind it. We'll have to research it later.
Yeah. So then the Game Boy Advance came out. And this is why I'm going to play the new version. Or in a second, I'll tell you which version, but the PSP version. Because 4 additional dungeons are added, Tim.
Ooh.
So I've already cleared 1, the original. So I've already proven my worth as a gamer. I want to try some of these new things.
Allegedly.
Yes. And also, did it talk about the PlayStation?
On mine. I can prove it.
Well, they remixed the soundtracks. There's they're full motion video cutscenes now.
Yeah, I've heard that before. When they did the special edition of Final Fantasy 4, like
those cutscenes are awesome. What are you talking about?
It's like the trailer. That's it.
Oh,
the trailer.
no, I think at the end of the game there was too. Wasn't there? I think in the ending they added on to. And then the mobile phone editions came out. The PSP is the version I'm gonna do because it has higher resolution 2D graphics. It has the sequences. It has a remix soundtrack, the bonus dungeons, and the script from Dawn of Souls, which is supposed to be more actually closer to the original Japanese in translation than the one you played. And they came out with the Wii Virtual
Not
Console.
a lot of dialogue in this game, Lance.
I want to someday play it in the original Japanese. I want
It's like-
pure scripture.
Each townsman has like one square of dialogue. It's like, that's it. There's no like real long conversations, and there's no interaction with the characters. It's just they say something to you and you move on.
Now, the rest of these are basically just re-releases on different platforms. The iOS came out with one first, but now you can get it on Android. Yeah, and I've heard, like, just looking at the Android reviews, the controls, and you talked about it, didn't you, Tim? Didn't you say the controls suck on the mobile?
Yeah, Android. I just hate, yeah, it sucks.
So I was like, nah, I'd rather play it. Plus, I can't really stream my playthrough on Android. At least, I don't know a good way. I'd have to use an emulator and blah, blah, blah. I don't want to do that crap. So, you know, I am a little curious, though, about getting an emulator and trying to play this computer version of it. Because I remember as a kid thinking, why can they not come out? And I didn't know about Ultima, but even if I did, I probably wouldn't have liked it. Why can they not come out with good role-playing games like they do on consoles for the computer? I never understood that. And I was always like, man, why can't you just put Zelda on the computer so I can play it? And it always really ticked me off. If only I had known that I could be playing Final Fantasy.
I just watched a YouTube video about the story of Shadows of the Empire for the Star Wars game and how it had there was a computer version and then the 64. This was one of their first ones, and they wanted to push it out to promote the 64 game. And they were the programmers were like so frustrated because there was only so much they could do on the console versus the PC, and there was like full audio what's it called? Voice acted animatics and everything for the or what do they call it? Cutscenes and stuff for the computer version, and there was just like a few like text boxes that come up with the graphic for the cheap one on the console. And there was something how frustrating was working with limitations that customers at the time, consumers, they didn't understand how hard it was or the big difference in limitations on those consoles.
Right.
We've come a long way now that we're playing. We're not as far as advanced as the people that are playing Final Fantasy on their computer before the Nintendo version, but we're getting there.
So I'm trying to find that there was a statement here that they were talking about the difference between the North American and the Japanese releases.
South American.
Yes. The rest of this isn't. I must have skipped it, but release. No, we talked about that. But anyway, it talked about how the Nintendo version in the US, they had like, it couldn't have like church things, like it couldn't have like crosses, so they removed crosses and just different stuff like that. I know that there are some graphics as well that they edited. Like isn't the naked snake lady or something?
Oh, then there's like a Naga,
Yeah.
and there's
She's
and
wearing like a bikini in the North American version.
something like that.
Even though, like, I mean,
Well, the Naga's a snake lady.
yeah,
Here, I have the strategy guide right here. But yeah, there's Lich, Carrie. Carrie's the name of the fiend that's a woman, and she's one that has like 7 arms and stuff like that.
Yeah.
She's one that would have been totally nude. Then there are Medusas, but they look really weird.
well,
And
they
then
all
there's-
look weird. I mean, in fact, wait, isn't this the? No, that's the Lich. Oh, great! Blow it up to that size. Anyways, you can go from this size to that size by zooming in.
Just Google Final Fantasy 1 Carrie, Kary.
We're not supposed to show nudity on Twitch, Tim.
It's going to come up with your PlayStation version and your Game Boy version.
Carrie?
Kary.
Kary. And I'm looking at images.
Yeah. Well,
okay, yeah. So she's
she
got
has a little seashell on her boobs. Yeah.
So you think this is the one that they edited?
I don't know. That's definitely that's the one I'm looking at in my book.
Original. No, I think it was a Naga. I think they said that the Naga was edited. How was Final Fantasy 1 US release edited?
The Naga is just a snake with a snake head.
This is
Or sorry, a snake with a Medusa-looking head.
Fantasy US release. It's not edited. What's it called?
Censored.
Censored, yeah. Or something like that. It's spelled with a C. North Summit High School graduate right there.
70. Yeah, it's gotta be the Medusa.
There's
Oh, the Medusa. The Medusa has a little bra strap thing too.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly,
it's not the Naga. The Naga is just a.
Final Fantasy IV was the most censored game in the series. That's interesting. But I swear that 6, 5. Shiva. And yeah, well, I could have swore that they edited some, but they did edit a lot of the words so that they were translated differently because they didn't want to use like churches and crosses and just different things like that. I don't know where it talks about it, but
so you fight a vampire and you get a stake instead of a cross. Yeah.
List of regionally censored video games. I wonder if this one has Final Fantasy. It doesn't have the original. Well, this one talks about it though. It says references to Christianity were altered, removed from the game as certain religious images. Maybe it was only 2 because Final Fantasy IV was 2. So Holy was been renamed White. Is White used in Final Fantasy 1?
No.
All references to prayer eliminated. Tower
oh yeah,
wishes.
the people they were praying at the in fact there was the praying and stuff like that in Mysidia.
Yeah. Programmers
They went up to the top of their tower to pray on the Rameumptum.
So maybe Final Fantasy the original didn't have any. Maybe it was only 2.
When you're saying that, I couldn't even. You don't even find churches. That's why they're clinics and stuff. In any other game, it'd be a church that you were healing.
Yeah. Okay, so we had a big long discussion about the difficulty. So I heard the GBA was this talks a little bit. This guy, Cairo Mew, it was Do Darkwood. I think he gives some good comments in the Game Facts and on GameSpot. He says. So he talks about something about an equipment glitch to actually get a nuke stick judgment staff as soon as you get a leather cap. So apparently when you get a leather cap, you can get some OP weapon or thing.
That's not in the original. I promise it's not.
I don't even know what he's talking about, so I probably wouldn't be able to use it anyway.
You don't get a leather cap until like 5 towns in, which is a lot in this game. There's only 7 towns altogether.
Okay, so he says the NES is hardest due to the special weapons and support spells not working properly. Lack of target redirection, which is what you were talking about when you if you kill an enemy that your other characters have targeted, then they attack the darkness instead of
exactly. And you waste their turns, and then those rounds really count.
Well, yeah, and that's pretty realistic in a real fight. That's one of the problems you run into is everybody can't attack the same guy or
right.
Yeah.
If you're surrounded by 5 guys and you attack one guy and your buddy on behind you attacks a different guy, if one of you goes down, you can't have a third guy just attack either one he chooses depending on who went out first,
Inability to cure KO or stone during battle, which you can get a Phoenix down in the newer versions.
Well, you can heal that stuff with Pures and Soft, but you have to do it on the overworld. If that happens in the battle, you're screwed.
Right. Extremely limited equipment inventory, and maybe something I'm forgetting. Okay.
Oh, yes. Each person can carry 4 pieces of armor. That's it. You don't have an unlimited item. Your items are unlimited. You don't get that much stuff. But weapons, everyone can carry 4 weapons, and 4 pieces of armor.
Yeah. So the PSX version, this is not the one I'm playing, but it's pretty close. The PSP version is the one I'm playing. It's easier due to fixes and changes, but still nicely challenging. Assuming you play on normal mode. So you can choose normal mode or easy mode. Then the easy mode does that level cap increases to 99. And I've heard that the PSP version is based off from easy mode.
There's one other thing we didn't talk about in the combat. This game, and as far as I know, is the only one like this, doesn't have an active combat stat. Well, I guess you have the options later on, but it doesn't have active where you can sit there and just think about what you're going to do. They don't. The bad guys will wait for you to make your decisions before they move on.
Yeah, and you can't choose to make
like, no, you're too slow to figure out what you're doing. They'll keep hitting you.
Oh, and this one they will?
No, they don't. No, I'm saying this one there's nothing but normal status. There was no active status. It's all round base, 100% round base.
Right, so the enemies will wait, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So
I mean, I don't know about these other versions, but the original, that was one of the things about it, was they gave you time to think. When I first played Final Fantasy 2, which was whatever, 4, 3, whatever, I was really having a hard time with that because I was younger and I sucked at these games. I'm not a good strategist. I was having a hard time, moving fast enough, moving my cursor, and that's why they had to come up with like the memory cursor and stuff because like you don't have time to talk around.
Well, and that's the thing that I don't like about the like if you're gonna do a system that is menu based, you really need to put some more thought into the strategy. I think Final Fantasy, if I remember, Final Fantasy 12 or 13. No, which one was the online one?
10.
So I think it was 12. Final Fantasy 12 did a really good job of that, I think, of making like menu-based strategy necessary to like really beat the game. So if you're going to have a menu-based game, you should definitely make strategy a big part of it. And some of the later Final Fantasies that are menu-based, especially the ones with like the save cursor. In fact, a lot of the remakes now, you can just put it on fast forward and play, and you don't have to do anything. You just sit there and watch it fight for you.
That's stupid.
Yeah, so anyways. So PSX easy mode, level cap 99, spell charges per level increase to 99 as well. So you know how you can only cast your spells a certain amount? They change it so that there's MP. I think it talks about that. Even though Origins doubles the HP of fiends, so it does actually double the HP of the enemies.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I think it's more like D&D because you have slots. Like you have so many spells, and you can use like 3 level 1 spells, 2 level 2, whatever, however many, whatever level it is. And the more, like by time, even if you're a maxed out character,
right.
By the time you're a maxed out character, you can only cast like 3 or 4 of the highest level spells, or something like that.
Oh, and by the way, Tim, have you done the ultimate challenge on this game, which is to
No,
all
I know you're
black mages?
No, it's all white mages. That's the hard one.
It's all white mages.
Yeah, it's all healers.
Wouldn't the hardest be all thieves?
No, because later on he's not too bad once he matures.
Once he becomes a ninja. No, the black belt's the one that becomes a ninja.
The problem with the white mages is because you don't. And I've watched someone play. I've watched like speedruns and stuff of people doing not all the way through, but just kind of see how you even get started. But like that's the problem is their attacks are so bad and they miss constantly. They miss everything. That's why, because they have really low luck scores and all that stuff that doesn't even work on the Nintendo game. But like and all they can do is carry like their dagger, their little baby dagger, or their little staff, which does like nothing. And they can't carry a real weapon until again like halfway through the game. So that's why it's so dangerous. They have no attack spells. All they can do is like run and barely fight. But what they do is they cast the way players can do, or people can do it is they have special spells that I never use playing it, like offensive spells, where you cast like luck increase and intelligence increase. So when you hit, you do a lot more damage. I never use that stuff, and they buff them. They'll use like the same spell. They'll have each of the white mages use the same spell on like one guy, so that person will hit really, really hard. So I'm like, wow, I didn't know you could do that. Because if it's not a lightning spell or something, like I'm like, skip it.
So I wonder if this. I don't think this. Some of the earlier Final Fantasies, if there was this thing that you could do if you wanted to grind really, really quickly. Normally, when you grind, it depends on the enemy's level where you're at, right? So higher level enemies, of course, give you more experience points.
Not this one.
What's funny is in one of the Final Fantasies, one of the early originals, you can kill your own party members, and then you kill. With one party member left, you kill the enemy, and you get a ton of experience points.
Yeah.
Because it basically counts them as whatever level they're at, and it just tacks on multipliers to your experience. And that's
this
the way
one. You can't target enemies at all.
You can't do that.
Mm-mm.
Anyways, okay, the GBA PSP version is identical except for the new dungeon and graphics. And the PSP is the one he says, easy as shooting fish in a medium-sized ocean with a high-powered orbital laser array. I have no idea what that means. I think what he's trying to say is it's easy. They ditched the Vancian magic system in favor of the MP pool. So that's what I was saying, is that now in the remakes they have an MP pool, so you can actually use like ethers. So you don't have that limitation of only 3 spells. Which I agree with you, sort of like takes away the strategy and all that. But
yeah, you have to preserve certain spells for certain bad guys. Yeah.
Then added a variety of high-end weapons, not in those versions, including a spell use piece of equipment whose attached spell is flare. The only things that can be said to be challenged here are the bonus bosses. But they are bonus bosses that don't exist in the original. 2 in particular want me to make me scream. They did in their native game too. So there you go. That's why I'm going to play the PSP game again, because I've already cleared the NES, and I want the new music, I want the new levels, I want the new graphics, I want all that stuff, Tim.
Okay, you just want it all.
So are you going to play? I think it talked about that version that you're going to play, that you have, right?
The original?
Way the heck down here is Final Fantasy 2016 in the NES Classic Edition. Is that the one you're going to play?
Oh, yeah.
It's the
Wait, what does
one.
it say? What's different about that one? Did they change anything?
It's the original version. It's the original version, emulated as an inbuilt title for the system. Yep.
Nothing changed, nothing fixed, no glitches at all.
I don't know. That's what it says. The original version emulated as an inbuilt title for the system.
Probably just because it's convenient, and that's what I have on saved right now. And the classic lets me do multiple saves too. That's the other reason. I don't want to use my cartridge and wipe out my ultimate save.
How old is that save to?
It's like, I don't know, like 12 years, 15 years, something. I didn't do it as a kid.
Well, what makes it so ultimate?
I didn't know. So, huh?
What makes it so ultimate?
Because I grinded to like level 50 on each of my guys, and that took forever.
I'm gonna hunt down that game and delete it, Tim.
I'll like load it someday. It'll be like, well, you have to find a working Nintendo, and I don't think you'll have one.
Okay, well, that's pretty much it for our intro of Final Fantasy 1 before we start our playthrough. So, any last words, Tim?
Yeah, are you going to describe what the format is for your show going forward? Because I'm sure no one is going to listen to this.
I have no freaking idea what the format of my show going forward is.
Beginning of episode 2, we'll tell you what episode 2 and the format are going to be about.
I think my webcam's in the States. I have one on my computer, but I'm on my laptop, but my laptop isn't as good at streaming and blah, blah, blah. So eventually you'll get to see our beautiful faces, or at least my beautiful face. So, Tim, when are you going to start playing the game?
Oh, boy. I have all this free time. I probably right now.
Well,
I think
you have to at least play it once a week.
If you want to do this, we can just set by whatever levels. Because there are kind of chapters and areas in the world that you beat in this game.
Okay, well,
so
let's say this. We should
beat.
I'm going to do a stream, but we can do a commentary about it up to this point once we beat the first guy, the first vampire guy.
No, you mean Garland?
Yeah.
The first vampire is like 2 or like 5 major dungeons into it.
Garland?
No, Garland's immediate. You walk right to him in like 2 minutes.
Yeah, we should talk about that.
But he's not a vampire.
Well, whatever.
He actually has a very special origin, or character, but I'm not identity. But I'm not going to waste. I'm not going to reveal it.
Well, I'll tell you that we'll do the playthrough, Tim, and then when we get to a point where I'm like, oh, I gotta talk to Tim about this, then we'll get on and do a commentary.
Just do that. Just you play through it, and then we'll cut together some commentary pieces on whatever you want to go over.
Yeah. Well, you got to play it too, though.
Well, then we just got to set goals of like by the end of this week, we got to play to this point.
Well, I don't know the points though.
I do. I'll set the goals if you want.
No, let's just play by ear for now because I don't know how much time I have, but I am gonna try this at least once a week.
You're sitting here pressing me with
probably twice a week, minimum once a week, but probably twice a week, maybe even every day. It depends on the week. This week's gonna be harder.
You're gonna record, play, or stream. What are you talking about?
I'm gonna stream my playthrough, so I'm gonna stream while I'm playing. In fact, you can jump on whenever you want.
Ooh.
But yeah, I'll have to see my schedule. My schedule is going to change too once I get back to the States because I'm in Taiwan right now.
Well, why don't you figure out your schedule and then let me know, and then we will.
Well, you know about that, Tim, is the schedule is actually on Twitch. You can like look up people's schedules. It's awesome.
But I know how you are with schedules too.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to go on my Twitch status on your profile to depend on when I'm going to be able to watch you play this game.
Well, you need to play it too.
You're a very man.
Okay, well, I'm going to end the stream. Thanks to Baby Yoda is the best 28 for being on. He's the only person that's on, and he gave us lots of Dorito chips.
I think that's a Dorito chip for every imp that you're going to kill in the first 20 minutes of playing this game.
If you don't die first.
That's right.
Okay.
If you don't forget your weapons.
Okay, see you guys next time.
Thanks! You need a better tagline than that for next time.